Hi, beautiful mama, and welcome to the Nourished podcast. Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you in this moment. I see how you've shown up every day. I see how you've pushed through exhaustion and fatigue to constantly show up for everybody around you. You are doing an amazing job, and I just want to acknowledge that. This podcast, it's not about being a perfect parent. It's not about being a perfect mother. It's about coming back to yourself in motherhood. And this moment right now, wherever you're sitting, whether it's your car, your bed, or you're running around doing chores, this moment is for you to nourish yourself and to bring back that inner aliveness that so often gets stripped away in motherhood. This is a safe space where we talk about overwhelm, depletion, about emotional nourishment, about how we fill our cup and how we find joy in our life again as a mother. Because with all the roles and responsibilities, it's so easy for it to get stripped away. And that's what it's about. That's what this episode is about. That's what this podcast is about. And I'll be exploring so many different areas associated with that. The question that I'm exploring is what it means to actually feel alive again in motherhood. Lately, I've noticed something that I just can't ignore. And that's so many mothers, they're not thriving in motherhood. They might be performing, they might be doing the role, they're showing up for their children, showing up for your house, showing up for your partners and your relationships and your families. But you're not deeply fulfilled. That's a problem because motherhood should not be driven by overwhelm. We're in a society where overwhelm has been normalized in motherhood. And that needs to change. That needs to stop. Because yes, motherhood's never going to be easy. We're pushed to the limit on the constant emotional demands that motherhood has. And that's part of it, okay? When we come into motherhood, that's the reality that we have to face, and there's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is the overwhelm that comes with that. Why we are overwhelmed and why it's so normalized. How many of you out there have, reached out to maybe a family member or a friend and, asked the question, why is it so overwhelming, to just receive the answer that, it's just today. Today will end. It's just a season in life. You'll get through this. I'm here today to say, no, we don't just get through motherhood. We should be thriving in motherhood. We should be deeply nourished in motherhood. So we need to move away from normalizing this overwhelm and this depletion that so many mothers have. Because I get that there's a reality behind motherhood, behind modern motherhood today. We have so many demands. I mean, mothers are constantly needed. I get that, whether you have one child or 4 or 5, it's always there. I need this. I want this. I need to do this. It's like, get to the point where somebody spills their milk and then you internally flip. That doesn't need to happen. So the constant noise, the constant responsibility, and the constant mental load that comes with motherhood and the pressure to hold it all together, okay? Because mothers, we're women. Naturally, we have more emotional depth, or we're in tune with our emotional depth more. And because of that, there's almost this invisible expectation to hold the emotional undercurrent of the entire house. And of course, so many mothers can do that. But if you're not supporting yourself in that, if you're not supporting your own emotional undercurrent in that, then there's nothing for anyone else to lean on. And, that's when we go into the depletion and the overwhelm, because we're not nourished within. We're not truly nourished to our core. We're not feeling alive within this journey. We're simply getting through the day. We're getting through the drop-offs. We're getting through just waking up and making breakfast, which can, be an absolute chaos wrecking ball in itself. Something as simple as breakfast turned into this, chaotic environment. The point I'm trying to make is that so many women and so many mothers are disconnecting from their self within this journey, okay? They're losing their creativity. They're disconnecting from their joy. They're unable to truly rest. Rest becomes uncomfortable because of that invisible load that's constantly over our heads. So therefore, we sacrifice the needs of our body to do the washing, to do the cooking, to do the cleaning. And of course, these are things that always have to be done. But when we're going from a place of depletion, that's when we're really using those reserves of our inner strength, okay? And when those reserves become low, become depleted, that's when overwhelm sets in, because there's nothing to sustain those mundane aspects. And motherhood has this ability to make us feel alive, to crack our hearts open, because they're our children. We made them, we brought them into the world. We brought them into this universe. We carried them within us for 9 months. And then, the years afterwards, that in itself is like, okay, we can get so much joy from that. But we can't just have joy from our children, because it doesn't work like that. There's the mundane aspects of children. There's the tantrums. There's, the everyday life. There's, the dishes and the washing. And, the joy that we receive from bringing life into this universe is not enough to sustain us through that, especially when we've lost that connection with ourselves. And this is not something that happens instantly. It's not like our child is born and we're instantly like, oh, we're depleted and disconnected from ourselves. It happens slowly. It happens so slowly that it becomes normalized until we're walking around and we feel like, we're zombies within our own skin. We're just getting the jobs done. We're staying within the routine. We're doing what needs to be done in order to get through the day. Okay? And that normalization of something that shouldn't be a part of motherhood is really dangerous. And it's so normalized within our society now that it's accepted. And so, I'm here to really make a stand on that. I'm here to really make a stand on that and change the status quo, because I want to bring joy back into motherhood. I want you to be nourished in yourself, and I want you to know how to do that without adding more burden onto your day. So pre-motherhood for me, I had so many things that I really loved doing. For example, I enjoyed cleaning the house. I enjoyed, going to the beach, and, I saw that as rest and retreat. And cooking was something that I really loved. And so coming into motherhood, so much stress was added onto those aspects of me that I really loved and that really nourished me. I mean, the joy got taken out of cooking. Cleaning the house became, a burden and a chore. And going to the beach, with young children, that is chaos in itself. One, you have to carry the children. Two, you have to carry all of the beach stuff down. And three, all of the snacks as well. And so then you get there, you're already exhausted when you get there. And then, it's a process of entertaining and, allowing the children to explore an initially uncomfortable environment for them. And so all of that got taken away from me. And I was left within this place where I was like, I don't know how to reconnect with myself. I don't know how to find joy again, because I've been depleted in all of these areas. It was almost as if, that had been taken away from me. And, it was a real shock. But I also saw it as an opportunity to really look at my life and parts of my life that I hadn't really explored yet, and allowed doors to open in that aspect too. Finding joy is not about, big leaps of faith and big gestures. It's also not about running away from a day to, retreat even though that's good, what I'm talking about is how we find joy in the day-to-day moments, how we find joy and how we bring ourselves back to us in the mundane moments. As you probably gathered, the issue itself is not motherhood. The issue is the chronic depletion and habits of self-abandonment that come with modern mothering. Okay, because it's so much easier to sacrifice ourselves in some moments than to add another burden onto our plate. I get it. I've done it. And it's not fun. It's not a nice feeling to feel depleted, to feel exhausted, to be aware that we're abandoning ourselves and we're not filling up our cups and truly nourishing ourselves. And to see any way out as another burden or another responsibility that we have to take on. And so that pattern continues and that habit continues. And it doesn't help that practically all mothers do it. And so therefore there's this almost acceptance that we can get from speaking to other mothers to, to kind of clarify this situation that we're in, to say, well, I'm depleted too. And then there's almost that connection and that looping. It's like, okay, well, it's not me. Every mother is exhausted and depleted and self-abandoning themselves. But that's where the normalization comes into it. And that's where it needs to stop, okay? Yes, we give endlessly. We have to. It's part of the role of motherhood to give and to be that giving aspect. But we also need to give back to ourselves too. And that happens in the small moments. So when we stop listening to our bodies, when we stop listening to our emotional needs, that's where the self-abandonment comes into it. And that happens in so many moments throughout the day, throughout the hours, throughout the minutes. It's that self-sacrificing. It's that inability to just go, my body is tired. I'm going to sit down for a couple of minutes to restore myself and to center myself. It's like most of us just keep going and going and going until we realize that, oh my God, we're depleted, we're fatigued. And then it's exhausting to think that there's any way out of it. And this really creates a problem over time because it creates a numbness. It creates a deeper resentment towards our life and towards our children and towards the reality that we are building a life around us that depletes us, that takes us away from ourselves, that doesn't nourish us in the way that it should. And it also teaches a deeper lesson to our children as well to be self-sacrificing themselves, because children grow up in the emotional landscape of their mothers, of the home. And since mothers are such a central part of that, and because children are so attuned to mothers, they absorb that as well. Because the truth is you can't be deeply inspired by a life where you're constantly abandoning yourself and you're constantly self-sabotaging yourself and you're encouraging that depletion. So I'm here to show you how you're doing that, because it can't become such a routine sometimes that we don't even know when it's happening. So after listening to this episode, I just want you to take notice of when you feel alive. If there's at any point during the day where you get that little spark, and if it's a no, if you can't find that, then I want you to think back to a time before children where you truly felt nourished and you truly felt lit up and alive inside again. Because they're signals and they're breadcrumbs of how you can bring yourself back from this place of depletion very slowly, okay? We're not demanding huge leaps here. So the next time you ask yourself, what do I need to do? What needs to get done? Stop for a minute and go, no. What makes me feel like me? What do I need in this moment? Can I give myself 5 minutes to just stop and reflect on that before we begin the hustle of the day again? Because it's important to notice the small moments. What makes us feel calm? What makes us feel drained? What makes us feel empty? What brings on exhaustion more? Because these are all signals that our body is giving to us on the path that needs to be taken. So, yes, this is a journey, and perhaps a journey of self-discovery, but it's also a reminder that you're not broken. Okay, nothing within you is broken. You might have strayed off the path a little bit and you might not know how to bring yourself back onto it, But that's okay. I'm here to guide you with that, and I'm here to steer you back into the direction towards yourself. Because as I said, we need to stop normalizing overwhelming motherhood and change the social norms associated with that. I know you're exhausted, but I see you. So let's bring yourself back home again. See you in the next episode. If there's another mama who comes to mind when you're listening to this, go ahead and share it with them, because this message needs to be spread and every single mum needs to know this.